What's good, everyone? I'm Zayas, and today I'm here to review Beet the Vandel Buster by Koji Inada and Riku Sanjou. If you don't know who these two are, in my books they're sort of legends for making Dragon Quest Dai no Daibouken, which a lot of you might think is only for fans of Dragon Quest, or some of you may have experienced it through the anime, which wasn't that great. But no, this book is the real deal, and it's one of the greatest fantasy manga ever made, in my opinion. And if you don't want to take my word on it, look at the sales for it. It's top 50 all time among all manga. The characters are great, the world building is awesome, I love the magic system, the enemies are intimidating, and it really is great if you're wanting to scratch that itch of reading a longer, more simple shonen work. After completing Dai, they started work on Beet the Vandel Buster, which had a lot of the same charm that Dai really had. But all good things must come to an end, and in 2006, Koji Inada got sick. I think prior to that he also broke his hand, and in came the largest hiatus that I have personally ever experienced. If you were a Japanese reader, it was only like 10 years, but if you were an English reader, it was closer to 15, which is pretty crazy, but I'm glad it's back. Unlike Koji Inada, who was sick the entire time, Riku Sanjou did try his hand at making some other works. Of them, I would say Ziga Cremators were kind of notable, but I didn't like them at all, and I really wouldn't recommend them to anybody. But he also did work on Kamen Rider Double, the manga adaptation. He adapted it to manga, and I actually really liked that work and think he did a pretty good job on it, but it's very unlike all the shonen type works he was writing beforehand. And right now he's also working with Square Enix on a Dragon Quest Dai no Daibouken prequel, which is also very good, and I would recommend it, especially if you read Dai. Even if you didn't read Dai no Daibouken, it sort of works as a standalone work with better art than Dai because it's more modern. But now they're both back to work on Beet the Vandel Buster, and Beet has a lot of beauty in how simple it is. Let's start with my favorite part of the work, which is the world building. World building is a word which gets thrown around a lot nowadays pretty carelessly, but works like Dai and Beet are worlds which can really compete with some of the best of them. In Beet, there's several different monsters, all with fun abilities, who show up new monsters every chapter just to show up in some small little panel, get one shot, and it's really cool to see all these different monsters running about this world. You got these tiny monsters which eat money, you got this giant beetle, you got all these sea monsters, you got this little stump which can communicate through long distances, and much, much more. Then you have all these vandals who are kind of foreshadowed and set up as these evil villains well before they fight Beet. Even with Busters, there's all this lore about Saiga's divine power and all this different stuff that we don't fully know and is slowly sort of being revealed to us what Busters can do. And there's even more lore about dark attacks. I love the huge map that they show of these continents, which lies mostly unexplored, and I love that every city you go to, they have different gates, they have different dress on the villagers, they have different environments, from these sandy kind of deserty looking places to this mechanical place, this fantasy kingdom. You have the starter town, you have Grenade's dark kind of thing going on. There's a lot of different environments. Then there's also things like levels and non-Saiga weapons, and this whole thing just makes everything feel very JRPG-ish. You got this party of 5, they're leveling up, they're fighting monsters, they're getting different special attacks. And I guess that would kind of carry over from Dai being very Dragon Quest inspired, but this whole thing kind of feels like you're reading a massive JRPG and you're kind of just enjoying yourself along the way. The story of this work, like I mentioned, it's on the simpler side. These vandals are trying to end humanity and humanity is fighting back. The basis itself is quite simple, but there's interesting developments everywhere you look. For example, what happened to the Xenon warriors? Was Radina the Vandal that interfered because she can teleport people? Who is the Winged Knight? Is it Xenon or is it somebody else? A new character maybe? And why are those eyes there? And why are they making vandals? All of this is unanswered so far. There's a lot to be interested in this series besides the fights. But the fights are also great. There's tons of variety, creativity, strategy. Everything is explosive and awesome in these fights. Beet is obviously our main character, so he gets the most fights total, but other characters get plenty of action as well. Characters like Slade, Poala, Milfa, all these other characters do get their time to shine. I'd say Saigas are also a pretty cool idea. It's not like the only time this has ever been done. Series like maybe Bleach, maybe you could even say Shaman King before this, had similar ideas, but I think the weapon designs are incredible, and I just love the idea of their soul being their weapon. On top of that, the dialogue in these fights is appropriate to the fights. A lot of shonens have problems where the dialogue sort of takes you out of the fight, but here, there's just enough dialogue to keep you engaged, and it never overdoes it to the point where you're uninterested. If you look at the weapon designs, they're all great. In particular, my favorite is the Boltic Axe, but I think all 5 of Beet's weapons, or the Xenon Warrior's weapons, are incredibly well designed. The gun, the blade, the axe, like literally everyone, the spear, the shield. And then you have Poala's. I think Poala's did leave a little bit to be desired, but characters like Slade, Milfa, great fun saigas. Even the King had a pretty fun saiga, and you can kind of look forward to what Kisu saiga will be in the future. The fights were incredibly dynamic feeling. There's kind of a ton of action lines in here, but they never felt like they were out of place. I loved how varied these fights were too. Nothing had went the same way because Beet was using different weapons, mastering different weapons, and the Vandals all have different weaknesses, so the fights are very different from one another. The art in general was just great. It features a lot of thicker lines, which gives a lot of weight to the characters, and designs in general were just incredible. Right off the bat, we get the 5 Xenon Warriors, all super unique and distinct, with Blue Zam being my personal favorite, the wielder of the axe. But there's also the main cast, which all looks pretty good. There's the King, there's all these random NPCs, kind of like characters. Even they are pretty unique. So I don't think this has the best character designs ever, or like, you know, one of the best, but it's very, very solid character design. The villains too, a lot of series don't have as great villains, but these Vandals are incredible looking. Beltor's this brutal demonic looking entity. You have Baron, this super chivalrous knight type of guy. Grenade, this brutal raging demon. You have Historio, this zombie. Where they're all just great. Now, I like the art a lot, but it did feel like it got weaker after the 10-year hiatus, which I understand. You're not drawing for a long period of time. It's probably going to be a little worse. It feels like there's a lot more empty space. There's a lot less action lines, which also might just be kind of like the modernization of it. The lines do feel a little thinner, with a little less weight behind them. And all these random little monsters that you would see running around initially in the world, there's a little less of them now. But I think as the series continues to be published, it's kind of getting back to where it used to be, and it's slowly improving. Lastly, we have characters. Beet is a shonen character through and through. He's confident, he's cheerful, he's earnest. He embodies a lot of the core traits that shonen characters have. He has ambitions and dreams to end the Dark Age. He has this unrelenting attitude. He has this deep connection with his friends. And this isn't a one-man show type of work. Beet needs his friends to be there for him, and they help him out, and he forms very authentic feeling connections with them. And his growth is super fun to watch. He goes around mastering all these saiga and remaining very positive despite the world sort of crumbling around him and him working this thankless job that people kind of stay away from. He has cool moments too, like when he snipes some of Grenade's underlings with the gun, or like when he slices a Vandal in half using his Excellion blade. There's Poala, Beet's wife, as you could call her, but she's fiery and brave and kind of embodies more of a normal person, so you can kind of really see how crazy Beet is. Kisu is a character who can be a coward at times, but at other times he's the bravest person in the group. Slade is cool all around. He has this mysterious assassin kind of too cool to even talk to the other people type of energy. There's no characters here that I liked as much as, say, Pop from Dragon Quest Dino Daibouken, but they're all very, very solid. Then the villains is where the series really shines. Beltor's is a great villain. He basically destroyed the world's strongest buster group by himself, and then went on to have this crazy 1v1 with Xenon. And then even the other Vandals are afraid of him. His design was my favorite among the Vandals. Then there was Grenade. His anger was expressed super well through his kind of crazy looking character design, especially when he transforms. And I really enjoyed the ending to his arc. It was super satisfying seeing, you know, the sky clear up, seeing all these tombstones and people that Grenade had kind of killed, and the people were all super happy. Baron, again, very honorable, but I'd say he was around the same quality as Grenade, with Beltor's being a little better, but these are all great villains. Geronud was a little bit of a disappointment. he wasn't as intimidating. He was quite ruthless in his endeavor to take down Beet. I did like his design as well. He just wasn't like at the same level as some of the other villains. Historio, I would say, is better than Garanut, but probably worse than the other Vandals. Again, his design is super cool looking. I love the zombie little thing that he has going on, but his attacks are a little bit weaker than his fellow Vandals, and like weaker looking, I mean. And his the real strong thing about his arc is Laos. You have the spear wielder back, and he kind of gets you invested in his arc. It's easy to be invested when he's around, and also Historio did have some funny moments which I appreciated, like with the ship captain kind of being this crazy dude, and Historio has to like execute him. Noah is somewhat of an oddity, and I'm looking forward to see more of him because we have seen him quite a bit, but the only place where you really see him is in the Chinese translations, so if you want to read the Chinese translations, then you'll find them. The whole story with the 7-star Vandals all seeking out Beet was a great way to set up all these fights, and you still have to look forward to Rodina, who's supposedly coming after Beltors, but we don't really know what's going to happen with that. Some miscellaneous stuff. There's a good mix of lightheartedness and seriousness in this series, just like Dai. It might have a little less lightheartedness, but there is some humor in here kind of to lighten things up, rarely. Beet also does get into close calls a little often for my liking. I get he's like the chosen one meant to save the world, but he doesn't need a close call like every time he meets a Vandal or even several. Also, when he finally does get his own original Saiga, it ends up just being a combination of the 5 others. I really didn't like that. I was hoping for something more creative, something new, fresh. So maybe he'll get something in the future, but who really knows? Kisu's romance with Milfa can also be cute at times, but I wouldn't tell you that I'm reading this work for the romance at all. There's a lot to look forward to here. I don't think it's quite as good as Dragon Quest Dai yet, but it has the potential to be just as good, maybe even better if things go right. Beet the Vandel Buster is almost like reading a Dragon Quest adjacent JRPG. I'm feeling a light to decent 8. Thank you everyone for watching. Like and subscribe, leave a comment about anything to do with manga. I read all the comments. Going forward, I want to review Shiguri, Radiant, maybe JJK, Homunculus, maybe Nikaido Hellgolf in there, but I will be going on vacation soon. So I'm going to put out a quick video, hopefully in the next couple of days, kind of just something fast and quick, just so I can get it out there. It won't be a full review because it'll take too long. And then afterwards, when I come back, maybe I'll get into Shiguri or JJK or something like that. Thank you.